Greetings, YouTube. The doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Dungeons and Dragons. And today we are going to look at, which just came out yesterday, the 2024 Druid. It says 2024 Circle of the Moon Druid and changes to Wild Shape. And there's some changes to Druid. So the question we ask, is this a buff or is this a nerf? We looked at the Rogue. The Rogue looks pretty good, except for the Assassin. We're not really sure what the tweaks are they're going to make to the Assassin, but the Rogue looked great. I have to say there's some major changes to the Druid, and a lot of people are not going to like them. All right, so let's get into it. They've got their little flavor thing up here about the Druid and you know what it is. They've got their table that looks at all the different changes, and then we take the closer look. That's really what we want to look at. So first off, this is a buff, shifting Wild Shape into a bonus action, or shifting Wild Shape, into a bonus action for the 2024 Druid is a major improvement in how easy it is to access your beast form during combat. Now your Druid of any subclass can shift into a brown bear or wolf without having to wait a turn to start swinging your claws at foes. So brown bear is a challenge rating 1, blah, blah, blah. And a wolf is a challenge rating quarter, blah, blah, blah. So it's okay. It's a little bit of a buff for the non-Circle of the Moon Druids. Staying in Wild Shape. Right here, this is, in my opinion, and they explain it a little bit further below, which we'll take a look at, but in my opinion, this is a huge nerf. So one of my biggest frustrations with playing a 2014 Druid, and I don't know who, is this Riley Silverman that's saying this, or was this Chris Perkins or Jeremy Crawford saying this? I don't know. But one of my biggest frustrations with playing a 2014 Druid at higher levels is that during combat, sometimes I'd spend my turn to shift into a beast form. Then before my next turn came around in the initiative order, I'd take enough damage to push me back out of it. As a result, I'd ostensibly lost a turn and expended a pretty finite resource. So I'm going to say something here. That's for lower level. It's not even for lower level Druids. That very rarely happens. The Druid had enough hit points in their Wild Shape form, if they picked the right thing, to remain in that form for quite a long time, because the form that they took had a bunch of hit points. We called it Druid armor. So although you no longer get a separate pool of hit points by shape-shifting, that's the nerf right there. Getting knocked out of beast form is harder as you retain your Druid's hit points. I don't see that. You also get temporary hit points to act as a buffer, and they're really not that many, by the way. So you no longer get a separate pool of hit points. You're going to have your Druid. So my question here is, if it's not a separate pool, then if you get hit for enough health to go get all your temporary hit points are gone and your Druid hit points are gone and you go to 0, do you revert back to your Druid form and then go unconscious? Because that's not the same as what it is right now. What it is right now, if we look at class features and we look at the Wild Shape, what it is right now, when you transform, you assume the beast's hit points. When you revert to your normal form, you return to the number of hit points you had before you transformed. As a result, if you revert as a result of dropping to 0, any excess damage carries over. For example, if you take 10 damage in animal form and have only 1 hit point left, you revert and take 9 damage. So you had basically extra hit points. And if you were a brown bear, you had 34 extra hit points. That's not the temporary hit points they're talking about. So the Wild Shape rules really come from a place of understanding that shapeshifting into a beast is a major appeal to the Druid class by making it easier to stay in beast form and allowing you to expend spell slots to replenish a use of Wild Shape. Okay, so I guess that's okay, but this part sucks. This part's horrible. Wild Companion was a new feature in the 2024 Druid, is the ability to expend a wild shape or a spell slot to cast Find Familiar without any spell components. This was an option feature introduced in Tasha's, so it's now part of the base class. So if we look here, I believe that is Wild Companion right there. Okay, so they're taking some things from other books, and we've seen this with some of the other classes, and they're layering it into the base class. So making Druids a force to be reckoned with at level 7. This is extra. The Druids get a feature called Elemental Fury. This lets players pick from 2 options, Primal Strike or Potent Spellcasting. Potent Spellcasting allows you to add your Wisdom modifier to your damage dealt with a Druid cantrip. That's okay. Primal Strike lets you deal a D8 of Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder damage once per turn with your attacks at level 7, and 2d8 at level 15. This feature leans heavily into the primeval forces that fuel a Druid's magic. Okay, so they're really trying to push the Druid to be in an animal form that attacks. And then known shapes, I'm not sure what I think about this. One thing that might stick out is the new rule on 2024 Druids having a pool of known shapes to choose from for their wild shapes versus any beast known to them. What might feel like just a limitation at first glance, trust me, it's a limitation. This means DMs and Druid players can be on the same page about whether or not a beast is known to the Druid. It also helps Druid players have their beast stat blocks for their wild shape forms ready to go. That I don't care about that. Not unlike having prepared spell lists ready. That's not an excuse. This change also allows for a bit more roleplay inspiration. Having a number of set forms that are known to the 2024 Druid means your Druid has spent time thinking about their relationships and reverence for different beasts and which wild shape forms are specifically important to them. So that means you can think about why they choose these forms, what they might have done to study them, and what sort of exercise rituals they may have done to maintain their hold on those forms during a long rest. Can swap out a long rest. So, I don't know. Are they going to give us a list of forms and you're stuck with that? Or are you going to have a certain number of forms that you can know and you can swap out at a long rest and then the number goes up every level? I don't know. We're going to have to see. To me, that feels like a nerf. A pretty bad nerf because Wild Shape says, which you got at 2nd level, assume the shape of a beast that you've seen before. That's it. Done. You've seen it. And does that mean you've seen it or you've seen it in a book? I guess that's up to the DM. But, all right, so now we've got some Circle of the Moon Druid wild shape changes. So they're getting this at 3rd level. They're not getting this at 2nd level anymore because a Moon Druid, Circle of the Moon, starts at 2nd level, and you get your wild shape as a bonus action. And while you're transformed by a wild shape, you can use a bonus action spell, expend one of your spell slots to regain 1d8 hit points per spell level. I hope that's not going away. So now, at 3rd level, your 1st level in the subclass, your AC in beast form becomes 13 plus your wisdom modifier. Okay? Unless your beast form AC is higher. Not very many. I mean, this is essentially going to be a 17 or 18. This right here. So, there's not too many beasts that have that AC. But you also gain 3 times your Druid level in temporary hit points, meaning you'll gain 9 temporary hit points at level 3, all the way up to 60 temporary hit points at level 20. So whenever they put an exclamation point at the end of a sentence, that usually means a nerf. This is a nerf. Don't confuse this for anything other than that. It is a huge, giant nerf. Again, because if we look here, the brown bear, this is like the option at low level, has 34 hit points extra that you get on top of your Druid hit points versus 9 temporary hit points. Come on. All right, Circle of the Moon spells. Like the 2014 Druid, the base class gains the ability to cast spells in beast form at level 18, except when a spell consumes a material component or requires a component of a specific cost. But the 2024 Circle of the Moon Druid can start casting spells from your Circle of the Moon spells table as early as level 3. I think that means that you're going to be limited to certain spells. This means you don't have to choose between staying in beast form or casting Cure Wounds on an ally. I didn't really think that was an issue. So the base class can't cast spells until level 18. But apparently there's going to be a special spell list, maybe. That's my interpretation of that. Circle of the Moon doesn't really have a spell list here, so I guess they're going to have one. Improved circle forms. So at level 6, you can choose to deal the attack's normal damage or radiant damage. This replaces the feature of making your mundane attacks deal magic damage. So what if you're fighting something that's resistant to radiant damage and resistant to normal attacks? So that's a nerf. Moonlight Step. Again, I personally think this is a nerf. You no longer gain the elemental wild shape feature, and if you knew what that was, here it is right here. You can expend 2 uses of wild shape to transform into an air elemental, an earth elemental. Again, you had 126 hit points plus your hit points if you were an earth elemental, a fire elemental, or a water elemental. Now you can't do that anymore. And now it has been replaced with more moon-flavored Moonlight Step, which allows you to use a bonus action to teleport 30 feet to an unoccupied space and gain advantage on your next roll before the end of your turn. Does that mean we're going to have to use a wild shape to do that? Or 2 wild shapes to do that? That doesn't seem... I don't like that. And finally, we got the lunar form at level 14, which replaces Thousand Forms feature. I never liked this alter self thing. It's not really great for combat. So with the lunar form, once per turn, you deal an additional 2d10 radiant damage to a target you hit with wild shape form attack. This means at level 15, on a hit, you would deal your base damage plus 2d10 radiant damage plus 2d8 of your choice. So they're really going for people going into wild shape and staying into wild shape. And so we'll have to see. I am going to say I'm not super impressed with this. And I am giving the new Druid because it looks like a lot of stuff. The amount of buff versus the amount of nerf, the nerf is more than the buff. So I'm going to give this a C-. I don't think this is going to be good. I don't think a lot of people are going to like it. But again, that's just my opinion. And that is what I have for everybody today. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody later.